Hello and welcome back to Football Daily, where with the end of the campaign in sight, we're running through the 10 biggest mistakes your club made this season. Let's go. 10. Everton not replacing RICHARLISON. Having survived by just 4 points in 2021-22 courtesy of 4 wins in their final 9 games, it's fair to say Everton left it late last campaign. And whilst the heroics of Jordan Pickford shouldn't be forgotten, it was RICHARLISON's 3 goals and wins over Chelsea and Crystal Palace and a draw against Leicester that helped the Toffees limp over the line. So when Spurs signed RICHARLISON for an initial £50 million and Everton lost the man who had provided 0.4 goal contributions per game across 4 seasons on Merseyside, it was imperative that Lampard brought in a quality replacement. Linked with Mohamed Kudus, Cody Gakpo and Mykhailo Mudryk, Everton failed to land any of them, forcing them to sign notoriously poor finisher Neal Maupay 5 days before the deadline. The Frenchman has scored 1 goal in 22 games, a tally matched by Calvert-Lewin, who has only been fit to play 735 minutes to date, leaving Everton with the worst attack in the division and mired in a relegation battle, one this time they may not be able to escape from. 9. Spurs centre-back recruitment. This was once suggested by Spurs YouTuber Matt Hayes, who believes that the Lilywhites should have targeted a left-sided centre-back last summer, and we can see his point. Antonio Conte was hell-bent on bringing in Inter Milan's Alessandro Bastoni, but the Italian never showed any inclination that he'd like to reunite with his former manager. Rather than sign an equally competent alternative, Spurs went for the low-cost option of bringing Clement Longley in on loan, so they could fund a £155 million spending spree on 9 players. Of those 9, only Perisic and Longley are amongst their 11 most used, ranking 8th and 9th. Basuma has started just 8 games, Spence was loaned to Rennes in January, and new signing Arnaud Danjuma has played just 55 league minutes. The counter-argument would be that Spurs were strengthening their squad for a return to the Champions League for the first time since 2019-20, and given Kane's history of ankle issues, it made sense to recruit a quality striking alternative. As it turned out, they only just progressed through their group, where they fell limply to AC Milan. Kane has barely missed a game, and Conte hated rotating his side. What a total mess. 8. Madrid not signing an MBAPPE alternative. Thanks to @ZizouStan for suggesting that his beloved Real Madrid should have signed a Kylian Mbappe alternative, when the soap opera that was the Frenchman's future ended up with him extending his contract in France until 2025. Given that this happened in May before the window even opened, Florentino Perez had months to get his ducks in order, but instead prioritised the signing of Aurelien Tchouameni, which preceded the departures of Casemiro, meaning that for the 3rd consecutive season Los Blancos made a net profit on transfers. Whilst the gap to Barcelona is a little disingenuous, given the fact expected goals suggests they should have conceded nearly 14 more goals, to be in danger of finishing 3rd this season is a massive disappointment. A new right back, left back and right wing depth wouldn't have gone amiss last summer, but with Benzema forced to miss 13 games with a succession of niggling injuries, their lack of a viable backup up front has undermined their hopes of truly challenging Barcelona. 7. Julian Nagelsmann's dismissal. On the 24th of March 2023, Bayern Munich took the decision to fire Julian Nagelsmann after 84 games and less than 2 years in charge. After dropping 12 points in 10 games post-World Cup, Bayern found themselves 1 point behind Borussia Dortmund with 9 league matches remaining. Die Rekordmeister may have been cruising through the Champions League against formidable opposition in Barcelona, Inter Milan and PSG, but the club's hierarchy still panicked, sacking the former RB Leipzig boss and replacing him with Thomas Tuchel. Whether Nagelsmann was going to be replaced in the summer amidst reports he was failing to win over the dressing room, having had issues with Lewandowski, Neuer and Müller during his tenure, is another matter. But given they played Dortmund, Manchester City and had a Pokal quarter-final in the next 4 matches, it was a massive risk. So did it come off? Well, not really. Whilst Tuchel might have comfortably won Der Klassiker, allowing them to build a 2-point lead at the top, their treble hopes ended in a matter of days, as they lost to Freiburg in the Cup and then were ripped apart by Manchester City in the Champions League. Bar a miracle at the Allianz, their European adventure is over this season. Changing managers at such a crucial time had the potential to backfire, and it did. 6. Nottingham Forest's recruitment. Earlier this month, Nottingham Forest took the decision to fire their sporting director Filippo Giraldi after just 6 months in the job. The former Watford and Brescia chief scout, whose claim to fame was discovering the likes of Richarlison, João Pedro, Abdoulaye Doucouré and Ismaïla Sarr, oversaw their January recruitment, which saw them bring in 5 players, taking the total number of players bought in this season to 29. Having failed to win their last 10 games, which led to speculation that Steve Cooper's job was under pressure, Geraldi has become the latest fall guy for a bizarre recruitment strategy unlike anything the league has ever seen. 33 players have been used this season. Big name arrivals like Emmanuel Dennis, Willy Bolly, Remo Freuler and Dean Henderson have disappointed, meaning that the only unqualified success stories of their strategy are Morgan Gibbs-White, Renan Lodi and Felipe. With games against Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford, Chelsea and Arsenal still to come, it's difficult to see Forest surviving. 5. Not selling Ronaldo earlier. Thanks to AHJ Rupp, who suggested that Manchester United should have sold Cristiano Ronaldo last summer. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and the Red Devils hierarchy didn't know how badly things would deteriorate with Ronaldo, with the Portuguese superstar throwing endless tantrums, including refusing to come on against Spurs and leaving the stadium early, before slandering the whole club in an explosive interview with Piers Morgan. But the signs were there. A player of Ronaldo's stature, with his incredible Champions League record of 140 goals in 183 appearances and 5 titles, unlikely to be topped in the near future, was never likely to take kindly to playing in the Europa League this term. Having missed the club's pre-season tour of Thailand and Australia for, in his words, family reasons, that would have been the perfect time to part ways. As it was, he managed 3 goals in 16 games before his contract was terminated. His January replacement, Wout Weghorst, hasn't fared much better, meaning Rashford has been overworked and is now broken down. We can't help but think this could have been easily avoided. 4. Hiring Nathan Jones. Unsurprisingly for a side currently footing the bottom of the Premier League table, 4 points from safety, Southampton have made a few decisions this season that deserve scrutiny. After 3 wins from their first 14 games, they decided to sack Ralph Hasenhüttl and replace him with former Luton Town manager Nathan Jones. With over 300 matches under his belt at Kenilworth Road, either side of a 38-game stint at Stoke, Jones did appear to have the credentials to make a success of it at St Mary's, but continuously shot himself in the foot. He claimed the 3-1 defeat to Liverpool shouldn't count on his record because he'd been appointed 2 days earlier, entered into a public spat with the manager of Havant Waterlooville, made an infamous speech about compromises, claimed statistically there weren't many better managers in Europe, and said he could have stayed in a mining community in Wales, but he wanted to test himself. 1 win in 8 league games, the 7th shortest tenure in Premier League history, Nathan Jones was a horrendous mistake. 3. Not replacing Schmeichel. Thanks to Leicester's finest at Nick Reed 84's suggestion that Leicester made a grave error not replacing Kasper Schmeichel. We wholeheartedly agree. After 11 years at the King Power, during which he won the Premier League, the FA Cup and made 479 appearances, 3rd on the all-time list, it was clear that Schmeichel would take some replacing. But amid financial constraints, Rodgers never got the backing he asked for, and the Foxes spent just £15 million on new players, despite losing Wesley Fofana to Chelsea in a third £50 million exit in the last 4 years. That meant that Leicester City started the season with the hapless Danny Ward in goal. He made a string of blunders, saved just 63% of efforts on target, 94th in Europe, and let in 5.5 goals more than expected goals predicted. Finally replaced by Daniel Iversen in March, it might be a case of too little, too late. 2. Liverpool not signing a midfielder. We all said it throughout the summer, Liverpool needed to sign a midfielder. Having failed to suitably replace Wijnaldum, and with stars like Thiago, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita injury prone, midfield seemed like the obvious area to target in the summer of 2022. Instead, the Reds splashed the majority of their transfer budget on Darwin Núñez, with Fabio Carvalho, a largely unproven 20-year-old, and Artur, a deadline loan signing from Juventus, their only midfield recruits. After Liverpool went winless through their first 3 games of the season, Klopp admitted his mistake, saying, "I was wrong." But rather than address the problem in January, he forked out an additional €42 million on yet another forward in Cody Gakpo. Now 12 points off the top 4, Liverpool face the prospect of their 6-2 hammering at the hands of Real Madrid, being their final Champions League tie for quite some time. And what's more, they've now decided that the midfielder they've courted for 18 months, Jude Bellingham, is out of their price range. Linked with a host of midfielders of varying quality, we are intrigued to see who they sign this summer. 1. Firing Thomas Tuchel. Look, there is an argument that Thomas Tuchel and his combustible nature was never going to work in a period of such upheaval at Chelsea. That despite his record of 3 trophies, including a Champions League and a run to 3 other finals in just 100 games, he was never going to be the man to lead the Blues into the Todd Boehly era, especially when he had to combine his role with so much scouting, transfer work and club building in the immediate aftermath of the takeover. But we don't think anyone could argue that firing the German coach when they did was the right right idea. The club spent £255 million on 8 players in the summer, but took the decision to sack Tuchel after just 6 league games, with the side in 6th. Fast forward 8 months and the club find themselves in 11th, closer to the relegation zone than the top 4, whilst Tuchel looks odds on to win the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich. 600 million spent, 16 players signed, 42 goals scored in 42 games to date, Graham Potter hired then fired. What a truly miserable campaign. So that was our look at 10 mistakes that defined your club's season, but we want to hear from you across Europe. What mistakes have we missed? Let us know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, like the video and subscribe to Football Daily with notifications switched on so you never miss one of our videos. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.